Recently, DUNU released two brand new IEMs in their Studio Series lineup. The SA3, which has 3 BA drivers, and the SA6, which has 6 BA drivers. The SA6 comes in at around $549. When DUNU reached out to me, they expressed that they felt the SA6 was a sort of Goldilocks IEM. So I'm going to be reviewing these from two different perspectives today, for home use, just for personal use, and also as an on-stage in-ear monitor for live performance. So is the SA6 just right for you? Let's find out here on Audio In Reviews. Okay, so let's talk about the design, build, comfort, and isolation of the DUNU SA6. But before we go into that, I just briefly want to go over what's included in the package. They have a very nice assortment of tips here. As you can see, they've got small, medium, large available for each, the blue, the black, and the white. Couldn't find the other white ones. I've found the ones that work best for me as far as overall fit and just the sound. The blue mediums here work best for me. Also included is, as part of their patented quick switch modular plug system, are 3 changeable plugs. The one I've been using is the 4.4 balanced for my DX 160 here, but they also include a 2.5 balanced, and then your regular 3.5 millimeter. They also include a 2.5 to 1/4 inch adapter and a very nice carrying case. Okay, so let's talk about the specifications of the DUNU SA6. These are a 6 BA driver IEM set. Consisting of 2 Sonian AccuPass vented dual woofers, 2 Knowles custom mid-range drivers, and 2 Knowles custom dual tweeters. Now, as far as the build quality, the resin that they used on these IEMs it's a resin that's sourced in Germany. And as you can see, it's a very, very high quality resin, kind of a smoky gray. So it's not perfectly clear. But of course, it's clear enough so that you can see all of the intricacy of of how the BA's drivers are arranged and all of the wiring. The craftsmanship on this is amazing. It's just exquisite. So the build quality, it just feels really, really nice. Now, as far as the design, of course, I love the design on this. The face plates, what it says on their website is each one is unique to your IEM. So this one, there's not going to be one that's exactly the same as the other. And what this is it's a resin it's called stabilized wood. And I guess what they do, it's dried wood that has been embedded with resin, and then it's heated and then cured in a vacuum and then hardened. The resin, it bonds with the wood. So again, and then they add like a custom color to it. So each one of these, again, are basically custom. They're unique to your IEM. Now, as far as fit and comfort and isolation, these fit my ears perfectly. The shape of the shell just sits in my ear just right. And so as far as with long listening sessions, I've had no issues at all with discomfort. It's a little bit of a shorter nozzle on these, but it still goes in nice and deep and seals just right. So comfort is excellent on these. Isolation is very good. I took a long flight to Pennsylvania, all the way from California, there and back, and listened to these both ways in a very loud jet. And these did a very good job with isolation. When I had the music at lower volumes, there was slight bleed through, but only slight. And I don't think that there's probably many universal in-ear monitors that are going to completely drown jet noise out 100% when you have music at low volume. So I think these were did an excellent job as far as drowning out the jet sound. When I had it at medium volume, I almost didn't hear any jet sound at all. So these did a very, very good job with isolation. So overall, design, fit, comfort, isolation, build quality is excellent on these, especially for that $549 price. Now I want to go over the cable quickly because we talked about this, the changeable connectors on this. I use the 4.4 connector because that's what I have on my DX160. But the system that they use, it has 4 little pins that plug into the end of the cable here, and then it locks into place quite securely. So that's very nice. And just the overall quality and build of these this interchangeable system here is just excellent. I love it. And as you can see, it has metal 2-pin connectors with the R and the L clearly marked. The cable is really, really nice. It's a little thicker than some cables, but it's perfectly fine. It feels quite supple. It never gets tangled up. It's a good length and just overall good quality. And it's an 8-core silver-plated copper. So, and it also has, of course, the metal chin slider right here, and it's just right. It slides up nice, and I can get it nice and tight up to the back of my head when I'm listening, and it just stays secure. So I love the cable. And again, everything that you get here for the price of $549 is excellent. The ear tips are good, the cable is great, the IEMs are great, the case is good. It's just a very, very well-rounded, solid package that DUNU offers you at that $549 price range. Okay, I want to talk about the sound of the SA6, but before we get into that, I want to say thank you to DUNU for supplying the review unit that I have here. They told me to give my honest opinion, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in this review. So before we talk about the details of the sound, I want to talk about the atmospheric immersion switch that's included on the back of each of these shells. Now basically what the atmospheric immersion switch does is give you a slight bass boost. So of course, as I was testing these IEMs, I was testing it with the switch on and with the switch off. And I will tell you right now, I did have 2 separate preferences depending on the use. When I was using these at home for personal listening, I preferred these with the switch off. When I was using them on stage for live performance, I preferred the switch on because that little extra bass boost just really helped as far as the sound of my kick and my floor toms, the bass guitar. I tended to like the overall sound signature a little bit better when I use them on stage. Again, but at home, I like the switch off. But I did test it on and off at home and on stage. Okay, so let's get into the sound of the SA6. The overall sound signature of the SA6 is a slight U shape with smooth treble. So you have a slight emphasis on bass, slight emphasis on the treble again, but the treble does have a smoother presentation. And again, that is with the atmospheric immersion switch in the off position. Now, the overall soundstage, the presentation of these is a little more intimate, so it doesn't have a super wide soundstage, but it's not claustrophobic by any means. The resolution, clarity, coherency of the SA6 is all very good. Okay, so as far as the bass of the SA6, again, Sonyin and DUNU collaborated very closely to develop that custom Sonyin Accupass vented dual BA driver for the SA6. And again, the vented part, one of the things I failed to talk about in the specifications was the extra vent that's on the shell. And I need to clarify that. It isn't entirely uncommon to see vented BA bass drivers, but what is uncommon is to see a vent on a shell for the vented BA driver. So he said that was kind of a unique feature. And again, the goal being to try to achieve more of a visceral, dynamic driver style bass. And in my opinion, they achieved that. Every genre of music that I listen to, electronic, rock, classic rock, jazz, contemporary jazz, classical, all of them, the bass was represented quite well in all of them, with electronic being my favorite. The bass was textured, layered, had really good extension, and just overall really, really good detail in the bass. And the bass and the sub bass overall are very balanced. So the sub bass doesn't necessarily overpower the bass, and neither does the bass overpower the sub bass. It's very, very balanced in that whole frequency spectrum. And with the bass boost on, the bass and the sub bass was still balanced, but just elevated ever so slightly. And again, it did not disrupt, it didn't bleed into the mids at all, and the rest of the frequency range remained pretty much the same. So now moving from the bass into the mids, again, like the bass and the sub bass, the lower mids and mids, upper mids were all very, very balanced throughout the whole mid frequency range. The mids are detailed, very clear. Vocals sounded natural, with females' vocals sounding a little more forward. Trumpets, the timbre of the trumpets sound very natural. Guitars sounded good. The attack on snare sounded really, really good. All of the pianos sounded very natural. Jazz, the pawn shop, the piano parts, the piano sounded just right. So the timbre and overall just the tonality of the mids is excellent on the SA6. And with the atmospheric switch in the on position, again, with the mids, there was no bass bleed into the mids. The mids stayed very balanced and sounded just as good as they did with the switch off. Okay, so moving from the mids into the treble, I want to slow down a little bit and I want to talk about the graph. If you look at the mids on the graph, what you're going to see, again, it's kind of a U shape, but overall balanced. But at the bottom of that U, the lower mids, at the lowest point of the lower mids, is around 400 hertz. And from that 400 hertz point, what you're going to see from that point forward is it starts to rise up a little bit as you come out of the lower mids into the mids. It rises, and then into the upper mids, there is a little hump at around 2300 hertz. And then it comes down a little bit, then you have another small little hump at around 4500 hertz. Then it comes down quite a bit. There's quite a big dip. And then it goes, I think around 5500 is where the dip is. And then it goes back up, and then there's another peak at around 7000 hertz. Past the 7000 hertz point, the treble starts to come down, and there's no more. 7000 hertz is the last spot in the treble where it kind of has that peak, and every frequency beyond 7000 hertz it just tends to go down. So that's why you have that, I talked about the smoother treble presentation. And again, like the mids, the lower mids, the bass and the sub bass, the treble is balanced. The overall, and that's kind of really, again, when I talk about the balance, the overall sound signature, even though it does have a slight U to it, it's overall very balanced. So going back to the treble, talk about that a little more detail. The treble is very detailed. The hi-hats have really good sizzle, and again, that's something I always like to have. The hi-hats have that good sizzle and resolve. Cymbals sound natural and have excellent resolve. The attack on snares sounds really, really good. The stick attack on the skins of the toms sound very good. Guitars sound great. Again, because of you have that smoother treble, the way they worked that treble out, again, you do have a more intimate presentation, but again, it's not claustrophobic at all. Now, as far as imaging and instrument placement, it is pinpoint precise. I can close my eyes when I'm listening to a live performance and tell exactly where each instrument is. The imaging is excellent on the SA6. And again, throughout the whole frequency spectrum, I mean, there's almost nothing I did not like about the sound of the SA6 for personal listening. Now, so for personal listening, this thing blew me away. I absolutely fell in love with this. Now I want to talk about stage use. So we're going to move down to the drums, and I'm going to move my camera, and we're going to talk about the SA6 for stage use. So we'll see you on stage. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the DUNU SA6 for stage use, for live performance use. I've been using these on stage on this drum set, this is the Roland V-Drum TD50, and I use the Allen & Heath ME1 as my personal mixing console. So this has kind of been my setup for the last several weeks that I've been playing with, and I've kind of been switching off between the Audio Monarch and the DUNU SA6, kind of comparing them to see which one I like better. I'm going to be doing a full review coming up on the Audio Monarch soon. I will say this, that I did prefer the fit of the DUNU SA6, and there were even some sound differences that I preferred the DUNU SA6 over the Monarch. But I don't want to go too much into detail other than to say I like them both a lot, and I love the DUNU SA6. And again, I talked about how when I'm on stage, I prefer to have the atmospheric immersion switch in the on position, because that just gives me, it just seems to emphasize that sub bass and bass in the kick and the floor toms, and also I need to be able to hear the bass. I love hearing my drums and the bass. Those are my first two things I mix when I sit down at this console, is I mix bass level and my drum levels, because I want to make sure I can hear him, and then vice versa. He has to make sure he can hear me, because we kind of set the foundation for the music. So it's very important that the bass player and I are locked in. So now, just to talk a little bit generally about how I do my mix and why it's important to have a good in-ear monitor for stage use. When I do my mix, generally what I do, again, I start with the drums, and then I go to the bass, then I do guitars, vocals. I do have to make sure I hear vocals because that's the leader. So and once I get my levels set, then I start doing my panning. All of my drums have their own separate panning, so I can pan my cymbals. Basically, how it looks right here is how I try to pan everything in my ears. So I have my hi-hat panned, not hard left, but almost hard left. I've got my left crash here a little more into the left, but still panned left. Again, my ride, just like where it is, not panned hard right, but to the right of center. And then the same thing with my right crash, is I have that, again, not hard panned, but further right than I do my ride. So the cymbals are kind of laid out in my head and spaced out the way they are here at my actual drum set. I do the same thing with my toms. So my snare is center, kick is center, my 12-inch tom here is center, and then these two are a little bit to the right. So then what I do is I do the same thing with the musicians and singers on stage. I will pan them according to kind of how they're laid out on stage. So what that does is that opens up and spaces everything out, and it allows to kind of separate the instruments. It's just a little easier for my brain to wrap around all of the sound that's going into my ears. It kind of separates everything out. So another thing again is a soundstage. A lot of the things that audiophiles look for in IEMs, musicians look for. So we look again for tonal accuracy. We look for soundstage, image placement, instrument placement and imaging. All of that is as important for stage use as it is for home use. So again, as far as the sound stage of the SA6, again, like I was talking about, it is a more intimate presentation, but it's okay because the imaging and the instrument placement is so precise and accurate that doesn't even matter. And between that and the tonal accuracy of the SA6, it's an absolutely phenomenal experience. When I'm playing up here, when I get my mix dialed in, the SA6 sounds incredible. The vocals, my wife's voice sounds amazing in my ears. The male vocals, when my buddy was singing lead the other night, his voice sounded spectacular in my ears. The bass notes, when my buddy has his bass all tuned up and sounding just right, man, I can distinguish those tones so good. A lot of people, and I understand not everybody has $500-600 to spend on an in-ear monitor or more in many cases. So I get that a lot of people just kind of settle for an entry-level budget in-ear monitor. They can get expensive, but I will tell you, if you can make the extra effort, spend the extra money for a nicer in-ear monitor, again, make sure your mix is done right, man, it'll make your stage experience so much better. I want to talk about the cable. The cable, one thing, again, I talked about that chin slider. Of course, when I'm wearing them, I wear them over my ears, and then I will pull the chin slider tight up to the back of my head, and then I'll tuck the cable into my shirt. And that way the cable's out of the way, and the IEMs are secure in my ears. Another thing I need to talk about really quick is the isolation of the IEMs for stage use. Since I'm using an electronic kit, not an acoustic kit, I can't speak for how they would work on an acoustic kit because obviously an acoustic kit is going to be a lot louder than an electronic kit. For an electronic kit, the way I use it, these things are perfect. So I would imagine that they would probably work pretty well if they can drown out jet noise. I imagine the isolation was good on my flight to Pennsylvania. I imagine the isolation would still be pretty good even with an acoustic kit with the proper tips and proper fit. So again, so just to kind of wrap things up, home use, the SA6 is awesome. Stage use, the SA6 is awesome. Build quality, overall sound, the balanced sound signature, it's all good. I love the SA6. I can't think of really anything that I don't like about it. So DUNU, man, excellent job. The SA6 rocks. So that concludes my review of the DUNU SA6. Again, I want to say thank you to DUNU for supplying the review unit. To all of my subscribers, thank you for subscribing. All of my new viewers, please like the video, share the video, subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day and happy holidays.